Welcome to Retire Southern, where we share character-driven stories from across the South. Stories that remind us not to wait for retirement to start living, because life is too short to wait for someday. I'm your host, James Lewis, and today I'm joined by Chef Chris Montero, Executive Chef and General Manager of Napoleon House, a French Quarter institution known for its courtyard culture, timeless food, and the unofficial daytime cocktail of New Orleans. Chris, welcome to Retire Southern.
Thank you. Great to be here.
For someone who has never been here before, how would you describe Napoleon House in one or two sentences?
Iconic, beloved by New Orleanians and guests alike. And, you know, one of the things I try to describe it, especially downstairs, the recent century of history, you know, the Impastados and the Napoleon House Cafe, kind of funky cool.
Yeah.
Because it's just got a unique vibe.
Said you brought up the Impastados. Mm-hmm. This was their place for, over 100 years?
Over 100 years now, yes.
Tell us how you and Ralph came into Napoleon House.
So in 2014, when we were in the midst of Ralph acquiring his family restaurant, Brennan's on Royal Street, which was a huge undertaking, a renovation that took over a year from slab to roof, a major undertaking. An article was written in the local newspaper, the Times-Picayune, because there was a lot of rumors flying around when Ralph acquired Brennan's, and they wanted to, the writers wanted to sort all that out. And so the locals understood the dynamic, the Brennan family, and why was Ralph taking over, you know, Brennan's. And they did an amazing article, a 3-page article in the paper with the family tree, et cetera, et cetera. Turns out, unbeknownst to us, that this proprietor of everyone in New Orleans loves and knows the Napoleon House for a number of great reasons. The Impastado family, well-known family here in the city. But we didn't realize that they were in a unique situation. The current purveyors and operators of the Napoleon House, Sal Impastado, the nephew of the original owner, his sisters, were getting up in age. And the building, you know, requires a lot of constant maintenance and upkeep. It's 230 years old at the time. They had been in their family for 102 years. And he was at a kind of a crossroads. They all were ready to retire. They didn't have anyone in place to take over. He read this article about how Ralph cared so deeply about his family's legacy. He knew that he would never recoup this investment of what he was investing into, make it, you know, what it once was and towards the end of his career, but it was very important to him, not only for that, but he's a preservationist and he cares about history. He didn't want it to get into the wrong hands. And all those things struck a chord with Sal Impastado. I know this to be very accurate because he told me this story, Sal himself, of why picked up the phone, no lawyers, no real estate. It was never up for sale on the market. Ralph, would you be interested? And if Ralph tells this part of the story, yes. Right? And then Ralph reached out to me shortly after that, said, you can't talk about this because it's not a done deal.
Okay.
They don't even want to involve lawyers, but they're interested in me I have an opportunity to buy the Napoleon House. Would you be interested? At the time, I was operating another restaurant out in Metairie, also doing Cafe Noma, had been involved in a lot of other projects and, you know, over the prior couple of years. Would you be? And I didn't hesitate. Yes. Just because of what it is and what it means to us, to Ralph and I, and to all locals in New Orleans.
So what does it mean to you?
First and foremost, I'm an 8th generation New Orleanian. My family goes back to 1750s, right? Before the Napoleon House existed.
Before it was built, yeah.
Right? So I have that link to the French Quarter and to New Orleans. But more importantly, my grandfather loved this restaurant. My dad used to come and drink at the bar, told me about it. When I worked down the street at Baco, I knew half the employees here. I passed it every day. I always was enamored by it, especially at night, seeing through the windows. And I thought it was cool. And I would stop in on a fairly regular basis. And all of those things are just ingrained in my, you know, upbringing and my work career. So that's why there was no hesitation. Plus, to be perfectly candid, all of my career, opening restaurants, building a brand, what it takes to start a new restaurant, which I've done many times with Ralph Brennan. I always fantasize, what must it be like to own a Mandina's restaurant, a Pat O'Brien's,
yes.
You know, to have that that luxury and that great, that great privilege to own something that's iconic that people will come to and is beloved, right? Mm-hmm. So all of those things I was already aware of when he said, "Would you be willing?" And it was no hesitation, right? So that's what it means to me.
So here at Napoleon House, you have two hats. You probably have more than two hats. We all have multiple hats, but at least on the website, you're listed as the executive chef and the general manager. Do you gravitate more towards one than the other? Is there a role that you prefer, and why? What's the difference between the two, and how do you approach both?
Well, that's kind of a couple of questions there.
Yeah.
I do absolutely gravitate towards the admin, not the operations end of it, the general manager role, because I not only wear two hats here, but I wear two hats at the other operation at Cafe Noma, and I'm also heavily involved in the catering for the company. So anything outside of the company. So in a sense, I kind of wear five hats, right? Yeah. And it's a young man's game. I mean, I still am passionate about cuisine and food and development of food and all things food. But it's just for me to be able to be a hands-on chef in all of these various operations. It's a lot, right? All I can say is I know what I'm looking at, so I can be a great mentor and I can help. And one of my favorite things at this period of my career is developing young people that are coming along and sharing what I've learned over the years. And I think because I've got all these kind of varied backgrounds, then I feel like I can really contribute in there. So absolutely the general management aspect of it. But I keep my toes in the food end.
You stay in the kitchen a little bit.
I'm in the kitchen. It's it's a significant amount of time every day.
When a guest walks through the doors for the first time, what is it that you hope they feel immediately crossing the threshold?
Authenticity. Okay. Right? I mean, we live in a city that is one of the greatest tourist attractions in the world, right? We get international guests every day. If you've been around the world, whether it's in other continents and major cities, there is always not a real experience. What we might refer to as tourist traps. What we might say, that locals don't go there. If you've traveled a lot, you know that if you get a guide or whatever, locals don't go there. It's all tourists, right? This is all of that and more, right? Because ask any local. The majority of our clientele here, and I spend every Saturday, we virtually have a line at all times during 7 months of the year, right? And every Saturday I spend at least an hour or two standing at the front door talking to people in line because it's fascinating to me to see this lineup of international, of every ilk. It's the other really beautiful aspect of this restaurant. We see everyone. We see everyone from top tier celebrity, A-list celebrities to people here on a budget in the summer traveling and staying in an RV park. I mean, with a family, right? Because it appeals to all of that, right? And to hear, and my number one question, how did you find the Napoleon House?
What do you hear?
Over and over again. Our friends who've been to New Orleans said, you've got to go to Napoleon House. My cousin lives in New Orleans. You've got to go to Napoleon House. We were here a couple of years ago. This is the first place we always go. When I read our reviews, I hear that over and over. The first place we stop when we go to New Orleans. I mean, that is a real privilege and a real joy to hear that, right? My goal is to make sure we maintain that. Yes. And if anything, make that memory better than the last time.
The Napoleon House is, I would say, almost synonymous. I mean, to me, it is synonymous with the Pimm's Cup in New Orleans. How did that association start?
So a lot of this is based on oral history from the Impastados. Okay. Also from the Pimm's distillery reps who we've met with. It's been a while now, but in the first 10 years, we met with them 3 times in the first 4 or 5 years we were here. And they shared a lot of interesting information with me that kind of coincide. As I understand it, Uncle Joe, we're in Uncle Joe's apartment right now, actually, where Uncle Joe, Giuseppe Impastato, was the original owner. He came to New Orleans in 1901 as a 15-year-old immigrant from Palermo, Sicily. That was the great Italian immigration to New York and New Orleans, right? So Uncle Joe arrives here, Giuseppe, as the eldest son of this large Sicilian family. And he gets a job working in the docks here in the wharf. What eventually was, we call the French market, but it was originally an Italian market, right? And saved money, made a loan for a lone businessman, if you will. That's a little nefarious, but interesting. And managed to buy what was once one of the most opulent buildings in the French Quarter. It's a century earlier, right? The home of the original mayor of New Orleans, Nicolas Giraud. And he bought this for approximately $13,000, right? And started a grocery, which morphed into a small cafe and grocery, which during Prohibition became a speakeasy in the E-room. Somewhere in there, he didn't care during that time period. We don't know exactly when because nobody seems to know. It's not documented very well. He decided that a perfect drink for the summers here in New Orleans in the heat. He did not care for strong alcohol, for whiskey, which was very popular at the time, especially with a lot of our Irish folks and working class here in New Orleans. He preferred beer and wine, and this drink he was familiar with in England, which was relatively new in the turn of the century. It was about 150 years old. He thought it would be perfect for the climate here. Okay. So he started serving this original old, what is today the old-fashioned Pimm's cups, which is what we still sell hand over fist here. And it's refreshing. It's low alcohol. It's kind of perfect for a hot summer day. It's how it's sold in London. And it just took, right? The Pimm's distillery, not the Impastato family, but the Pimm's distillers credit us with introducing Pimm's to America at the Napoleon House restaurant.
Really?
And our claim to fame is we sell more Pimm's per volume. We purchase more Pimm's here at the Napoleon than anywhere, any one entity in the world, any one venue in the world, even in London, right? That's now, insane. They sell far more Pimm's in London in the summertime because it's everywhere, right? But, it's a lot of people can say is that a New Orleans traditional cocktail? I mean, some people have referred to it that, but it's really a Napoleon House cocktail. Yeah. I mean, everyone who copies it. And, there's contemporary versions all over the country. We sell really the old fashioned because it kind of fits.
So how do you put together an old fashioned Pimm's cup? Can you talk about that? And of course, like most cuisine and most things in New Orleans, like our Creole cuisine and how they've morphed from what they were in France, boudin, what it is in France and what it is in Louisiana is a different animal. Same thing with the Pimm's cup. And the biggest difference is Pimm's number one, right? A third, a fresh lemon juice and sugar and water, lemonade, if you will, fresh lemonade, finished in England, in London, with a splash of ginger beer. Mm-hmm. Well, Uncle Joe did it with 7-Up, right? Yep. And then garnished with cucumber at the time. Mm-hmm. Now, today, if you go to London, there's candied fruit, and it's almost like what Bloody Marys have become in contemporary bars. Some of them have salads and proteins and bacon in them. But if you sell an old-fashioned Bloody Mary, it's kind of a Mr. Boston kind of straight up thing. We sell that version, right? And we just do it with Sprite as opposed to 7-Up, right? But other than that, it adheres to the original restaurant because recipe we use fresh lemon juice and simple syrup and a splash of 7-Up with Pimm's number one. And it's a low alcohol drink. Mm-hmm. Many contemporary Pimm's cups have a shot of gin. We sell it that way too. Okay. Along with seasonal flavors, etc. But hands down, we sell 50-1 original Pimm's cups to those variations. So whose brainchild was it to freeze it?
The corporate office.
Okay.
Right. They just pushed and pushed. I had some.
Were you against it or were you for it? How do you feel?
I'm not against it because it seems to please a lot of people. I just got to make sure I struggle with the fact I really want people to try the original old-fashioned Pimm's. It's because it's a different thing. Mm-hmm. But from a standpoint of selling a frozen drink in the summer in New Orleans, I mean, I totally get it. And it's become enormously popular. Here's what I had a problem with. Okay. Putting a daiquiri machine behind that amazing old-fashioned bar, right? Yes. So we make it in the back. Okay. Right? The daiquiri machines are set up in the server station, and we serve them to large numbers. I'm happy. We found a nice balance. I'm really pleased.
That feels like a good compromise. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for the original, but I will say if you're taking a walk and you need a roadie, it's a great option. Nice to go. Right. I'm assuming you sell more of the non-frozen than the frozen.
We sell a lot more than particularly the traditional, but we sell a lot of all of it. I mean, 40% of all of our beverage sales are Pimm's cups, and we are a high percentage of beverage sales at Napoleon House in overall. So yeah, we sell a lot of every version. By far, the original over ice.
I feel like we're getting into the trinity, or at least my trinity of the Napoleon House, the Pimm's cup. So next up in my trinity of the Napoleon House, the muffalata.
Yeah. Sure.
Not just the muffalata, the warm muffalata.
Yeah.
Which is different than the central grocery muffalata,
Absolutely.
which we can get into. But so the muffalata is a sacred sandwich in New Orleans. What do you think makes Napoleon House so distinctive?
A couple of things. You hit on the first one we're well known for is selling a hot toasted muffalata, melted cheese. I mean, it transforms it into a different thing, you know? B, the traditional features mortadella. If you're not familiar with mortadella, you are, but you know, many people don't realize it's sort of a really upscale bologna from Orleanian in Italy, right? Uncle Joe preferred something a little different, and we use pastrami in lieu of mortadella.
I didn't realize that.
Big flavor punch, much more costly, and we buy a really high quality New York deli pastrami, and a lot of the local ingredients. So that's a big difference. And then, of course, every olive salad is slightly nuanced difference. And we do some cool stuff like adding chickpeas to ours, you know, garbanzos to the Italians, and some other ingredients that are slightly different. It has all the standards though. You know, it has jardinera, pickled vegetables, and olives and so on. But it's got these other ingredients that make it unique. And not that we're the only unique one. Everyone kind of that prides themselves that makes their own olive salad makes it a little different. I'm really fond of ours. So.
Yeah. When you're preparing the muffalata, is it better to prepare the muffalata in advance, kind of like a bolognese, and you let it like meld like overnight, or do you prepare it and heat it, or is there anything like you need to let it like absorb things for a little?
All of that.
Tell me about that.
The olive salad is made at least a day to 3 days in advance.
Okay.
We sell so much when we're busy that we literally have to make about 40 gallons a day. So
40 gallons of olive salad?
We use 20-gallon Lexans, big 20-gallon tubs, if you will, and we make that by hand, right? Every day. It's the best way to make it, so you don't compromise you don't break it apart or make it change. What's really nice about it is the textures and all these different components, right? So we fold it by hand with all these ingredients, and then it melds. It definitely sits for a day or two, and it's like so many other things, like a bolognese or a lot of our famous dishes, where it gets better every day. It starts to really absorb these really great components. The sandwich itself has to be pre-assembled up to a point. Okay, meaning we take the bread, but we do it daily. We don't ever do it a day out or whatever. Every morning we take up to 200, 250, sometimes 300 whole muffalata loaves, because our number one seller by far are halves. You know, they're big for those people that have never had a muffalata. It's a big sandwich. Big sandwich. So selling halves. So 400, maybe consider on a busy day, maybe 600 plus 700 plus orders of muffalata, halves, quarters, and wholes. So we pre-assemble the whole muffalata with the meats and cheeses and the bread and the olive oil. And then it's stored in the morning before the shifts begin. Sometimes when we're busy, always in between shifts, we never close. We open from 11 to 10 every day, 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. So in between, we'll have to re-up those and make more. We can only hold so many. Right. And then as they're ordered in real time, a la minute, as we say in cuisine, meaning is when the order comes in, they go through a conveyor toaster, which is the absolute best way to do it. Uncle Joe originally did it in a deck oven. Think of a floor standing kind of pizza oven, right? Big cast iron. It was still here when we got here. It was just wasn't functioning. It's just an old relic, right? And they weigh a ton. By far the best way to simulate that and to keep up with the speed, that we required. We run a 2-deck conveyor toaster oven, top, really, really nice, quality piece of equipment. It has to be, because it's a workhorse here. And we just roll out. And then the olive salad, you can't hold it too hot. You can't keep it cold, because if you put the cold olives, so we hold it warm in a steam table. Okay. So that's the process, right? It's pre-made. The olive salad is already melding for at least a day, if not two. It's toasted in real time. It's put warm olive salad that wasn't warmed that day, because it does start to break down from heat eventually. Okay. So we like to keep that really fresh. And that's the process.
So when you're actually assembling the muffalata itself, what is the bread, olive oil, cheese? Like what is the progression?
You mean you're talking about the pre-assembly?
Yeah, when you're stacking it up.
So you take a loaf of muffalata loaf, right, which is what it originally was in Sicily, just a loaf of bread, a round seeded loaf of bread, and we slice that, of course, and paint it with extra virgin olive oil, both sides, interior, right,
both sides,
and we layer ham, Chisesi ham, and salami, Genoa salami, and that pastrami. And on the other half, we layer, it ends up being the other half when we separate it. So the two cheeses, right? Swiss and provolone. And then we close it and store it in the morning. And that comes out, open it up. You have to separate the cheese on one side and the meat on the other as it goes through the toaster. That's why you get a nice even heat. It heats the top, the bottom, the interior because of the, double-sided toaster. And it gets it to this level of perfection where the cheese.
So then the olive salad's like right in the
olive
middle.
salad's sitting on a steam table at warm, about 120 degrees. Any higher than that, it turns gray eventually. So we it's less, it's a little bit of a science to it, but it's pretty simple. And then, it comes out of the toaster. It's all gooey and the meat's sizzling and stuff. And you throw the warm salad on it and cut it to order.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if the olive salad was above the cheese or in between the meat and the cheese. So
it's in between the meat and the cheese. Yeah. It's in between the meat and cheese.
So you probably won't be surprised to hear this, but in Georgia, where I live, you don't have access to muffalata bread.
Right.
Okay. So for anyone trying to do it at home that doesn't have access to muffalata bread, what would you recommend as a substitute?
Oh, easy. Any, you see every grocery anywhere is Italian loaf, seeded braids, any of that is what I recommend because that's going to be the most similar to what a muffalata loaf is, right? They're very similar breads.
Let's pivot to probably my favorite part of the Trinity, the red beans and rice.
Mine too.
So red beans and rice in this city, it's more than just a dish. Why does red beans and rice carry so much meaning in New Orleans?
Oh, it's a centuries old tradition, right? Dating back to pre-Civil War era, of course, into our early years here in the city. The origins of it are greatly debated, meaning the origin of the ingredients and why they came together, but that's another story. And of course, it's got this rich history of done on Mondays because of wash day. And that was a day you could cook something long and low, et cetera, et cetera. But it's another one of those iconic dishes that you see all over the world in different cultures and different cities that have, traditional dishes, right? That depending on where you grew up, how your grandmother cooked it,
right,
what neighborhood you grew up in, it's going to be slightly different. You got to make a really good one. You're still never going to please everyone, right? Because they want it. It's too thick. It's too thin. I don't like whole beans. I like it creamy. It's just like gumbo, just like you name it. Everybody's got a slightly different way to do it. I think ours is a really, really sound version of it.
I would say locals, myself included, would quietly insist that you guys have the best red beans in the city. Why do you think people respond to your version of red beans so strongly? Because I think it hits that really nice balance of all those notes. It's not too, it's still, it's got all those components to it. I think it's really an enriched version. It doesn't appeal to our vegetarian, which we get quite a few requests. Can you make red beans and rice vegetarian? Do you have a vegetarian option?
Not on this current menu. We do it for parties on a fairly regular basis. And I strongly try to dissuade it because, I'm all about the pork fat. I mean, we use 3 different types of pork product in a red beans and rice, just like my grandmother did, with a whole hock and a salt pork and sausage, a pork sausage. And when you combine all 3, they all give different textures, different flavors, different profiles, right? That add to it. And particularly those ham hocks, because that's where it really helps with the, it's if you don't have a relatively high percentage of rendered pork fat in that dish, then you're missing out on what it can be, right? So therefore, when a vegetarian version loses all of that aspect.
Yeah.
And it can be good as a beans and rice dish, but it's a different thing.
It's a different thing. I'm sure this is a matter of personal preference, and I'm just asking because you asked 10 New Orleanians this question, you probably get different answers. How long do you prefer to soak your beans?
We don't pre-soak the beans.
You do not pre-soak your beans. Wow.
No.
Okay.
But, and I'm not one to necessarily be a big fan of overnight soaking, but my wife is, and so she soaks everything overnight. We've just found slow and low in a steam kettle.
Interesting.
But keep in mind, not everyone has a steam kettle, but think of a crock pot, if you will, right? Gets you there.
Okay.
The difference is if you try to cook red beans and rice at high temp, try to rush it and put it on a stovetop and try to cook it in a couple, it's not going to be the same thing. But by cooking it for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours in a slow, much lower temp and letting it come up, you achieve the same goal, in my opinion. So if you like ours, they're not pre-soaked.
Okay. I didn't realize that. I assumed they were.
Yeah.
When you're in the restaurant and you see someone order the red beans and rice, maybe someone that hasn't had it, it's their first time having it, what do you enjoy about watching someone experience it? All right. What's the best reaction you've ever seen?
Well, one of the best reactions I ever seen was we recently had a celebrity here, a championship wrestler that came and did a video shoot here. Mm-hmm. And he's a big food fan, and he's eaten all over the world, had many bean dishes, but he just expounded on how do you get beans to taste this way, you know? I've experienced the same thing in Central America and South America for the same reasons, rendered pork fat that's incorporated into it to get that mouthfeel, right? Mm-hmm. That umami that you can get with, by getting that balance just right. Somewhere 20% rendered pork fat kind of gets you there. But, that was probably he was just blown away, and he was essentially eating almost everything on our menu, but he was particularly fond of the red bean, which is arguably one of the most pedestrian neighborhood simple dishes that we offer that everyone in this city eats on a regular basis. So to be able to, to sell it. And the other challenge is is when locals really praise it, then that's the challenge, right? That's the hard part.
Yes.
Because you know how critical local can be.
Oh, absolutely. Let's pivot to the history of this building. The story of the building itself, right, is inseparable from food and drink. But talk about the origin story of the Napoleon House, how it got the name Napoleon House, going back to the mayor, Girard.
Complicated story, right? With lots of caveats, lots of versions.
Sure. Well, give me your version.
Many of which are disputed, and I don't pretend to know the exact answers. All I can do as a real history buff, my background in college was history. I was a history major. Okay. So this was kind of fell right in my wheelhouse, who worked in restaurants in the summer, and for side jobs, and never is documentation, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a history nut like I am, you really want to know for sure before you can make a statement.
Yes.
But here's what we do know. We know that Mayor Girard was here in the city. He was a very integral part in the Battle of New Orleans, right? Mm-hmm. Being the sitting mayor when the battle took place, being in charge of the Creole militia, having to work and consult with Andrew Jackson, and being a real key component as being a liaison between our privateers, Jean Lafitte and Dominique Yu and Jackson, and being in that circle. Secondly, New Orleans was, according to the French ambassador to the United States, who told me the story just 3 years ago, was that, it's very well documented fact that Napoleon, after the Battle of Waterloo, before he was recaptured and exiled, definitely wanted to relocate to New Orleans. That was his first choice. That the government, his government, after his defeat, were trying to smuggle him to New Orleans. I did not know that until a few years ago, and I thought I understood. I learn something new every month that I'm here, because it's such a interesting deep dive in a lot of misunderstood history. And he said, no, that's a given, that he wanted to come to New Orleans, right? He also said that this was the most enthusiastic supporters of Napoleon in the world outside of France, was the colony of New Orleans. Makes sense. It's francophile city. They were kind of a rebellious colony. Mm-hmm. They enamored by Napoleon Bonaparte. So when he was defeated at Waterloo, was the same year that Mayor Girard was integral in the Battle of New Orleans. Mayor Girard was already one of the most popular French expats here in the city. That's why he was elected, first freely elected mayor in the city was this Frenchman. He became even more of a hero to the locals. So you've got all these things coming together at the same time, right? Their hero, Napoleon Bonaparte, is captured. He's trying to figure out how to get here. Many of the people escaped, that were tied to him, generals. One of those pirates that fought in the Battle of Normandy, Dominique was a captain in Napoleon's army before his first capture. So you had all these circumstantial links to him. And the city really, really wanted the rumor that was flying around that Mayor Girard is embellishing and adding to this opulent French Quarter apartment that he was relatively new at the time, right? It was finished where we're at. Well, this is the oldest part where we're sitting now in 1795, but the other areas that were rumored to be what he was going to offer to Napoleon were finished in 1812, just prior to Waterloo and the Battle of New Orleans. When they were finished, that this barroom gossip, this rumors was just taking over the city, that obviously our heroes are going to rescue him, and offer this to him. There are stories that there was a letter written. We just don't have the letter. No one can find the documentation. We also have no proof that there wasn't a plot to send a ship to St. Helena and try to rescue Napoleon. And because he's probably the most famous modern day figure in the world, that kind of overshadowed the history of how significant this building is historically because of the Battle of New Orleans. It's a National Historic Landmark as the Mayor Girard House, not as the Napoleon House, right? Because of his Napoleon was a superstar then, and he's more of a superstar today than he was. So, I embrace both. Was there a ship going to be built and try to rescue him? Of course, he dies in 1821 on the island of St. Helena at the height of these rumors, which grew and grew and grew. So what is factual, what's true, is that the rumor, if you were here in 1815, 16, 1818, everyone in the city were buzzing about Napoleon is going to live here. So that's not made up by tour guides today, right? A local at that time would have bought into that same thing.
Sure.
Whether it was happening, whether it was actually a plot to rescue him for saying no is in great dispute, right? Because we can't prove it. So, probably, maybe.
Who knows?
Maybe.
I love the story though.
Yeah, it's a great story, right? It's a great story.
Just curious, have you seen the recent movie Napoleon with Joaquin Phoenix?
That's where I heard the stories from the French ambassador.
Okay.
I had the privilege of doing a lot of the food service for President Macron and his wife for the first official visit to New Orleans by a head of state from France. Most of the city didn't even know that a head of state had never been to New Orleans before President Macron just a few years ago. I casually met the French ambassador, who was part of his entourage from DC, shook his hand. Months later, this movie's being released. We get a phone call from the ambassador. Chris, do you remember me? Would you be interested in hosting a party at the Napoleon House to celebrate, to have a pre-release viewing, screening, and a party for dignitaries and invited guests for the release of this new Napoleon movie? And I said, yes. Yes, I would.
It's amazing.
And he flew me up, went up to DC and went to his residence for this amazing party. And he pitched it to me. And that's when he told me these things that I didn't know about. Well, yes, it's well documented that Napoleon wanted to be here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We threw this amazing themed party with costume, period correct costumes. We had lots of French, part of the local French entourage of dignitaries and the ambassadors. And after the party, as the party wound down, we all went over to our theater just blocks away and had a pre-screening the day before the international release, which Sony International approved because at the request of the ambassador. So yes, I'm familiar with the movie. Yeah. And it was a long day though. Yeah, it was a long day.
I bet. It sounds like it. Mm-hmm. Within the spaces, you talked about the bar room, the courtyard. Uh-huh. The courtyard, to me anyway, feels like the heart of Napoleon House. Why do you feel like the courtyard space is so important to the restaurant?
Again, because it's the real deal, right? If you, and we have this privilege because one of the things that myself representing Ralph Brennan, what we really shine at are these private functions, right? Weddings, formal dining. I like to feel that we do what we do downstairs, neighborhood cuisine done right. We also shine at, but that's my personal background, growing up here. But up here is where what we really do, as a Brennan's employee for many years. And so I have the opportunity on many occasions, even though I have two fantastic sales persons who sell nothing but events, right? To great success over the last 10 years. We've many times the amount of business, but I get to talk to clients on weekends, usually when they're off, to show them the space. And it's such a privilege to when someone wants to hold their wedding here, or a corporate client that wants to do a site inspection, to have them walk in and you do nothing. You either get, kind of, if they're looking for bells and whistles and modern, you can sense right away.
Sure.
But more often than not, 80% of the time, you get this look of, this is it. This is what we're looking for, right? And that's what the courtyard represents. It is a authentic 200-year-old, French Quarter courtyard that's gone through very few changes in those centuries. Matter of fact, the entire building has essentially gone through very few architectural changes in 235 years. And that's pretty rare in the French Quarter. So that's why I think it's iconic, because we keep it authentic and real. It feels that people pick up on it all the time.
Yeah. To bring this full circle, someone coming to the Napoleon House for the first time, they're going to order a Pimm's cup. Absolutely. Non-negotiable. Is there any variation of the Pimm's cup that you would recommend someone try, or should they just stick with the original?
So to answer that question, about 2 or 3 years ago, 2 years ago, after much debate whether it was doable, we started offering a flight of Pimm's, 3 5-ounce servings, to try the original, to try the Englishman's, which is a shot of gin, of 80 proof gin in an original, and a seasonal. And to me, if I were gonna, if you want more alcohol, then drink the more contemporary version with gin in it. But the one that's most, kind of intriguing and interesting, and we try to tie it to, in strawberry season, Ponchatoula strawberries, fresh strawberries. We had a strawberry puree to a Pimm's cup, becomes a strawberry Pimm's. And Satsuma season, winter citrus, we do a Satsuma Pimm's, and then we do a watermelon Pimm's in the height of summer. They're all, to me, just great kind of contemporary versions of this original thing. And they get really, really well received. So, I would suggest that.
So on the flight, they rotate by season.
The flight, the seasonal changes all the time. The other two are static and are always the same.
We talked about the muffalotto. We talked about the red beans and rice. I don't want to sell anybody short. Is there something else on the menu other than those two things that, hey, if you're here, you got to try this? What would you recommend? Yeah, I mean,
one of the things that kind of departs from what we do here, which is really earthy food. It's not, I have the privilege of running another operation out of Noma. Could not diametrically opposed. It's real contemporary. It's really healthy. It appeals to, what needs to be in an art gallery, in an art museum. So we have a lot more contemporary dish, a lot of interesting international ingredients, et cetera. Here we sell neighborhood food, right? You hit on most of them. Lots of po' boys, muffaladas, gumbo, jambalaya, right?
Yeah.
Boudin.
Yes.
And this was an impastato dish that, we've done minor tweaks to, but they do a salad of a shrimp remoulade salad inside of a whole avocado, skin on, just cut it in half, load it up with shrimp remoulade, put it on top of some mixed greens with some red onion. And, boy, it's one of my go-to recommendations. When people say, listen, I don't really want a sandwich. I don't eat bread. What should I get? Because it kind of, it's a different take on a really classic New Orleans, traditional dish with a remoulade. And to me, it kind of tells a story of Creole culture, but in a salad, right?
Sounds amazing. Last question. You can't work forever.
Right.
You've been here and you've been with this institution, this place for a while. at some point when you walk away from this place, what will you miss the most?
Probably just interacting with the people, with the customers. You know, I have a really loyal staff. I have a great privilege. Not only did we absorb the original staff from the Impastados, we've doubled that staffing level because we've tripled the business, right? And I'm very fond of many of those. And I've got a number of employees who've been with me for well over 2 decades. Probably a third of the employees either been with the Impastados or with me. Many of them followed me here. So that's great. But what makes this place unique is that what I told you about earlier, interacting with the guests and hearing why they're here and then watching how excited they get. I've never received so many cards and letters and postcards and emails because I love to give tours of the building, right? It's one of my passions. I like to, something we call unreasonable hospitality. I don't have to, I won't accept money for it. But if someone's interested, and I sense it all the time, what's upstairs? Can you tell me a little bit about the history? If they're interested, I'll spend an hour or 2 with and Bob and Jane visiting from Mobile if they want to look around. And I take great joy in that. And it's been amazing how many people have responded to it because I do it, seeing them get excited. I mean, it's one of the things the Brennan family has instilled in me. It's all about hospitality. You're here to make people have an experience, right? And there's no place like this for giving people experience because touch on anything, right? You want to talk bars? I mean, Tales of the Cocktail adores this place because of what it is, right? An authentic, old, classic bar. Food lovers, I can show them all different kind of aspects of the cuisine. History buffs, ghost tours.
Yes.
I still don't get the ghost tour part, but they come here to see the ghosts, right? So, you know, you can touch on all these areas. The place is it's just not one thing. It's something for everything. That's what I'll miss the most. It is definitely, of all my experiences in this industry, whether it was managing nightclubs and bars many, many years ago or working in French classic restaurants when I was a youngster, and then my experience with the Brennan family, this is by far the most enjoyable experience because of all of those things, right? It encompasses everything I set out to do in my career.
It's wonderful. Is there anything else that you would like to share that we didn't cover today?
Come and visit us at the Napoleon House.
That's perfect. Well, that's a great place to land it. Well, Chris, thank you for caring for an institution that reminds us the best experiences are never rushed. And thank you for listening to Retire Southern. You can find this episode and more at retiresouthern.com. You can follow us on social media at Retire Southern. And until next time, remember, don't wait for retirement to start living. Chris, I thought I was going to walk downstairs and get a muffalata or some red beans and rice, but you really piqued my interest in that shrimp remoulade avocado salad. So thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime.